What's good, everybody? Welcome to the long-awaited episode 3 of Project Lightwaves. I am one of your co-hosts, Chastity, and I'm here today with the wonderful Joe. How are you today, Joe?
Hello. I'm good. How are you?
I am good. We finally got some news. So, that's exciting to talk about, certain.
Yes, we're just in time. Yep.
Yes, not late at all. Just kidding. Uh, but we've been gone for a bit, but thankfully there hasn't been, we haven't missed
Yeah.
out on too much. Um, recently,
Not the craziest summer,
no, it was not.
gaming wise.
Yeah, like these summer of games and like all these
Oh
hyped up
boy.
events have been kind of a bust.
Oh boy.
Yeah. But I mean, unfortunately, that's kind of just the current state of things due to, either COVID or, things just happen, unfortunately. So
Sure.
we have to be patient. Patience is a
Yep.
virtue. Um, but
It's more than a virtue when you're a Square Enix fan. It's a necessity, I'd say.
well, yeah, you kind of have to make sure, like, you don't, a game doesn't get announced, and then you end up 10 years pass and you're married with kids.
Yeah.
That tends to happen. You're waiting on a Square Enix game. Your
Yes.
life quite
I'm
literally
I'm
passes you
sure
by.
sure everyone remembers 2006.
Well, it's funny because if you want to touch on that, I guess this would be kind of a good, like, small topic to be like, when did you kind of like become a Final Fantasy fan or get into Square Enix? Because I got into Final Fantasy, like, I knew what the series was before
Yeah.
like really getting into it, but I didn't get into the series like playing games myself until like right before 13 release. So I didn't see the announcement
Oh,
of
so
verses
yeah,
and stuff.
around that time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Wh-
go ahead, I'm sorry.
well, personally, I'm an old fart, so uh, I got into the series with seven.
Mhm.
I'm no, it's not really original, but it is what it is.
Mhm.
Uh,
You're one of those.
I
I'm just kidding.
yeah, sorry.
No.
I I did play other Square Enix games before seven. I think my first SquareSoft game at the time was Secret of Mana, a great game, by the way. But I didn't really become a quote unquote fan until Final Fantasy VII.
Mhm.
And yeah, I've kind of been a fan ever since, even
Mhm.
if I've sort of fallen out of love with the series and the company as a whole after I think 10.
Mm.
10, there was a huge gap after 10 released,
Mhm.
which was the last really uh, good PlayStation, PlayStation 2 game for me.
Mhm.
I wasn't really a fan of 12.
Mhm.
I couldn't play 11.
Mhm.
And then 13, it was the
It's the
the
black
last straw.
sheep of yeah, it's the black sheep of the
Yeah,
series.
and on top of all that, 14 1.0 released, and I was out. And it wasn't until 2.0 released that I've kind of started playing Square Enix games again.
Okay.
So the whole PlayStation 3 era, I think I just skipped.
Mhm.
Not only for Square Enix games, but maybe games as a whole. I wasn't playing a lot of games at the time,
Mhm.
so yeah. And here we are. Square, in my opinion, is doing way better than it did in the previous. Not it's not the previous gen anymore. It's during the PlayStation 3 era, and things are looking good again.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
No, that's really interesting because like the thing I was gonna add on when you were saying like it's funny I got into the series kind of around that time of like the versus
I was
13
quitting.
hype.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because
Yeah,
like I didn't see like I didn't see when those games were like announced, and so I think maybe
yeah,
that probably changed my perspective of those games. Like I was never like hyped for like Versus 13 or like even when
uh,
I saw a trailer
yeah,
of 13, it was kind of like, oh, it
yeah,
looks cool, I'll play it, but it wasn't like, oh my god, like yeah, I don't know. So maybe if
yeah.
like,
Well,
oh, go ahead, I'm
maybe
sorry.
that was the thing. No, no, it's okay. The thing for me, because I wasn't really into the series
Hmm.
or the company at the time, that Versus 13 trailer didn't do anything for me really.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, and
I'm not one of those.
yeah, it's because I do feel like it's a very interesting conversation of like there it like specifically I feel like that era of like Square Enix where it did feel like a lot of new fans were like drawn into the series specifically because of those announcements. And
Yeah,
I just found it interesting that I just kind of became a fan on accident because like for me, to kind of explain my backstory with the series was that I grew up on like basically watching my brother play Final Fantasy VIII. Like that was a game where like I would always get
yeah.
excited when like like the FMV cutscenes. Like that was like watching a movie for me, and I'd be like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, like the cool scenes are coming on, and I remember when he first got his PlayStation 1 because it was actually a really big deal for us because it was our grandma who bought it for him, which, that seems like on paper, like, oh, that's normal, but like our grandma is a Jehovah Witness. And if you don't know what a Jehovah Witness is, they don't celebrate holidays. So like her,
Oh,
yeah, like so her going out and like buying this PS4, like I could still remember that moment. Like I was probably like 4 or 5, and I can still remember that. Remember this to this day. Like I remember getting like some teddy bears, and then she goes into her room and brings out like this huge box, and I'm like, wait a
wow.
minute. And like my
Wow.
brother opens it, and it's a PlayStation, and I'm like, I was young, but I was younger. I was old enough to understand that what he got was better than like
Well,
some
you
teddy
know what they
bears.
say, the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So like her bond, because like I mean, there'd be a couple like once we were older, like a couple birthdays she would give us stuff, but like they're not supposed to like celebrate holidays and birthdays. So like her doing that was like a big deal, and I remember like Final Fantasy VII like actually being on the back of like the PlayStation box. And so
oh,
that's how I always knew what that game was, even though I had never played it. And I remember there being a demo. I think my brother played it, um, but we never got Final Fantasy. So I guess it never drew him in. But I think 8 did, and so he got it for Christmas. I think for like the year it came out.
yeah.
And so yeah, that was just to me. I recognized Final Fantasy through that game, and I remember when like Spirits Within when that was coming out, when like
Oof.
yeah, like the commercials like on TV, and I kind of was just like, oh, that has the same name of the games my brother would play, and like my brother drew a lot, and I think he used like Final Fantasy as like inspiration. So like I would see art of like the games we like he didn't play,
Yeah.
but I think he just drew on them for inspiration. And then for me, when I got to middle school, I was at a new school, and I made like this friend group, and they were talking about Kingdom Hearts, and I didn't know what that was because at the time I really hadn't developed my own sense of taste in games. Like I would just play whatever my brother had. Um, and one of them, they let me borrow their copies of Kingdom Hearts 1, and then I liked it, so then I borrowed Kingdom Hearts 2, and I remember my brother
Oh.
saw me playing it, and he was like, well, if you like this, my friend, and you're gonna laugh when I say this, he was like, my friend, he has Final Fantasy 10 too. And I'm like, I don't know what that was, but I was
Oh.
like, sure, I'll play it. And then You know, the rest is
And
history, as you can see.
yes, yeah, I can imagine it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I'd actually played Final Fantasy VIII actually before that. It was actually because when we first moved there, I didn't know anybody. Like we moved during like a holiday break. So I was bored and I had nothing to do, so I played Final Fantasy VIII for like the first time, and I actually really liked playing it myself. And then once I started school, I got into Kingdom Hearts and yada yada. But yeah, that's kind of my backstory with Final Fantasy is that after I played 10-2, I think my brother, shout out to my big bro, because he kind of like fostered, my love of video games and would buy stuff for me. Like he bought me 10, and then I think after that, I used like allowance money or something I had to like buy 13, and then I bought 9 myself, and I just kind of slowly went through the series. So
Nice. Nice.
yeah. So yeah. So it's kind of funny that like, we came into this series at like different. We kind of came into the series around the same time because like Final Fantasy VIII, it came
Yeah.
out like closely.
So really, yeah, your first hype cycle for a Final Fantasy release was 15.
Yes, yeah. Because when I started, I think when I became aware of like the fact that okay, Final Fantasy is like this huge series, and there's games coming out. I think it might have been like, um, because that was the time when like they would still like have the Japanese release come out a couple months before the global
Yeah.
release, right?
Yeah, sometimes even more.
Yeah, and so I think like I just remember like I don't know how, but I think I just found like 13 trailers and I remember watching them and I was like, okay, this looks cool. I'll get it when it comes out. And I don't know, like I can't like tell you like how long it was before like the game finally came out. Like I know it had to be like at most probably like a year. Because I
Hmm.
don't remember waiting like long for it to like drop. Um, so yeah, like I didn't really have a hype cycle for 13, and then for 14, I honestly wasn't really kind of aware of 1.0 at the time.
You're lucky. You really are.
Yeah, like because I think I was in high, like I was probably like in like late middle school, like early high school when like 1.0 for 14 was like a thing, so that just wasn't on my
Yeah, and
radar.
2010, 2011,
Yeah, I
something
was in
like
high
this.
school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, I think like in verses, I can actually remember. I'll always probably remember like the year the verses. We got that trailer when it like turned into 15 because that was actually the year I graduated. So I'll always remember that. So
Yeah.
like even with verses, like I was never a part of that hype cycle. Because I just wasn't interested in the game. And then I think like a couple years later, I think when the directors changed and there was kind of like some movement of like, okay, this game is real and it's gonna come out. That's when I was kind of like, all right, I'll just get over myself and try to get into this game. And um, there was the whole like uproar of like Stella being gone and Luna being the new
Yeah.
character. And
Yeah.
so like I think around somewhere like I think around the time we had that trailer that showed off Luna for the first time, but everybody thought it was Stella. I think that's when I like finally started to get on board with like
These poor
15.
souls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because I was like, yeah, a woman, like they're showing her again. So I was like,
Oh no.
yeah, we all know
Oh
how that
no.
turned out. so,
Yeah.
so yeah, 15 was technically my I don't really count it to be honest. I would consider 16 like my first real Final Fantasy hype cycle. Like
Oh,
15 is a weird case. I don't fully count it because it wasn't. It's so disjointed that I don't feel like counting it.
yeah. I understand.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. it's funny. It's around that time that you could feel that Square Enix was changing a lot of things.
Mhm.
Around 2013, like they changed the director of 15, and they
Mhm.
completely changed 15. And at the same time, 2.0 released in 2013 too.
Mhm.
Uh, they the I felt like that they really started to care about the franchise more around
Mhm.
that time. I'm pretty sure it's because earlier, a few years earlier, there was a change in the CEO
Yeah, I was
changed.
gonna say leadership.
What
Mhm.
yeah, Wada left, and uh, Mitsuda, I think, is the new CEO.
Mhm.
I think it's his name. Yeah, it was for the best. I think we can say.
Mhm.
uh, Things really picked up thanks to 14 doing well, and even as polarizing as 15 was, it did do well for them. And now 16 is looking good. And you know what S is looking good?
A certain game by the
A
developers of
certain
Final Fantasy 15.
yes.
Yes, Forspoken. That was actually a really great transition.
Yeah,
um, they actually showed it. It was basically kind of like a little over a week ago, about 2 Thursdays ago. Um, Sony had
the
a
real
place.
E3.
Yeah, basically. That's one thing I'll say about Sony is that I think they know how to, like, I know there's a whole discourse about some of their games or their
Yeah,
big games kind of being quote unquote the same, but I feel like they've mastered how to like hype people up. um,
yeah,
and so they had a PlayStation 5 showcase where they, showed off some new announcements, some games that might have been announced, but we never saw gameplay. So we saw gameplay of them for the first time, and
yeah,
some games, some third-party game titles that we had seen before, but not a lot of. And Forspoken was it kind of fit into the latter category of being a game where we only got like short snippets of like gameplay and like the story. Like I think most people had connected the dots that like it's the dreaded word on air.
yeah.
Is it a isekai? Is that how you
Isekai.
isekai? Okay,
Yep.
yeah. That's like the dreaded word on Resetera in terms of it being a story about this woman named Frey
Yeah.
who is from our world, the modern day where she's from New York or at least lives in New York, and she's transported to this world of Athia, if that's how you say it right. It's either Athia or Athia, I'm not sure.
I think the cuff pronounced it, but it wasn't really clear.
Oh,
It's
okay.
either Athia or Athia.
Oh, okay, okay,
Uh,
okay.
we'll see, I guess.
Okay, we'll see. Me mispronouncing things will be a constant trend in this podcast. I am sorry in advance.
It's
But,
fine.
but so Joe, I guess you can start first and kind of just telling me like, what were your initial thoughts upon, seeing this new trailer, and then I guess your second thoughts of like, all right, now it's been like over a week, and I know they've kind of like, I think they've, I think in a blog they might have like hinted on some extra details in terms of like some characters and like voice actors and stuff like that. So just your
Yeah.
overall impressions so far.
Yeah, I try to keep up with the Twitter account.
Mhm.
I think that they tweeted some cool renders,
Mhm.
especially the big baddie.
Mhm.
I don't know if you saw her.
Well, I kind of have a hot take about that, but we'll get into it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I thought she looked cool.
Mhm.
I think her name was Tenta Sila.
Mhm.
Tenta being her title more than
Mhm.
her name, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah. she looked pretty buff too. That's not something you see a lot in
Mhm.
games. Okay, the trailer. I thought it looked great. First of all, I know there has been some, negative comments about the dialogue and
Mhm.
the overall, I guess back and forth or banter between Frey and her cough
Mhm.
or whatnot. Again, I think that can be attributed to uh, lip syncing not
Mhm.
being ready again in
Mhm.
a Square Enix trailer. I know that happened with Seven Remake in a
Yeah.
couple of trailers.
Mhm.
It happened with Kingdom Hearts 3 as well. When the lip syncing isn't ready, it can be weird because you notice every time Frey was talking, you weren't seeing her mouth move or she had her back turned, which means like basically they recorded the voice line
Mhm.
just for the trailer, and that never really comes out good and
Mhm.
when you show it to people.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Despite that, I thought that the trailer looked great.
Mhm.
You could really see the graphics had improved compared to the first trailer
Mhm.
or the first showing. Uh, the it I was hoping we would see Frey in before her transportation, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Mhm.
It uh, it seems like there's a darker story for her there. Like
Mhm.
the overall vibe was kind of depressing
Mhm.
before she transported.
Yeah.
I think it will be interesting to see that developed. What were your thoughts?
Well, I guess to just touch on the dialogue thing, where like, when they first showed the trailer and I was watching it during the stream, like, I did have that thought of like this feels awkward, but like it wasn't
Yeah,
this earth shattering thing. Like, yeah, like how you just explained, like it sounded like they recorded it for the trailer, and I think that there were some parts of the trailer where I think that I think the dialogue would have been carried more so better by like if some of the scenes they like spliced it with were better, because I remember, I guess just a critique, there was a part that the awkwardest part of the trailer to me is like when she, I guess, gets in, she's sucked into like the new world or whatever, and she's like, what's going on, and they like kind of like it like slides over to like the portal. Like I don't know if
yeah,
like understand what part of the trailer I'm talking
yeah.
about.
No, I get it. It wasn't really, it was a bit janky,
Yeah, like
I guess
that.
the word is.
Yeah, I think that's a good description. It was very janky and awkward, and so I feel like if some of the parts were kind of like edited better, I guess I should say, then I think
Yeah,
maybe people would have
well,
less issue with the
yeah,
dialogue.
you're right.
Mhm.
Totally. Like it happens with trailers. Like
Mhm.
maybe there were some parts in between that they didn't want to show.
Mhm.
It wasn't ready. So when you cut a trailer like this, and some parts are missing, it's definitely weird, like you said. Like
Yeah. So I think that's just kind of at least what I wanted to add, because I don't think, because you named Kingdom Hearts as an example, and I think Kingdom Hearts 3 was a game where I felt like that game, once you played it, I think it had bad voice direction. Like I'm just gonna say it. Like a lot of the performance weren't good
yeah,
in my opinion,
I agree.
and I don't think this is gonna be a case of that. I think it's gonna be more towards the Final Fantasy VII Remix side, as you mentioned, because I specifically remember the TGS trailer for the remake, where I saw people being like, why is the English version of the trailer so awkward or like weird, or like the voice actors are bad? And it's like, it's
I
because,
remember that.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's because it's recorded, y'all. Like, it's not the actual performance from the game. So
yeah.
so I definitely feel like Forspoken will lean more towards that side because I feel like if you listen to the woman who is the voice actor and like model for Frey, her first name is Ella, right?
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
Ella Balinska.
Yeah, Ella, like when you listen to like her performance isn't bad, you know, so I don't think the voice direction and stuff like that, like it is like I'm not gonna lie, like I'm not super into like the whole Marvel like quippy stuff, but I also feel like it was edited like that from the beginning of like, hey, like here's this woman, like she has these cool powers, and I feel like as the trailer progressed you see like I think like the whole point of the trailer is to show like she's going to be in for like a very rude awakening because
Hmm.
I guess to touch on to like the villain Tanta Sila when she's they
Yeah,
like show them fighting at the end. Frey's getting
yeah,
her ass kicked. Like she's not winning that
yeah.
fight.
Yep.
so so I feel like, you know, like how you said it's gonna be like a darker story. I do feel like, you know, start off with like when she arrives in the new world of like, oh my god, like here's these awesome powers, and then it's gonna be like, all right, you're gonna have to like actually learn how to like really use these powers to survive in this world so you don't die, you know, stuff like
Yep.
that.
Yeah, and that fight with her was like her wake up call or something
yeah,
that
yeah.
she's not strong enough. Yeah.
Yeah, because like when they show like the gameplay of like her using the magic to block, like Scylla was like
Yeah,
she
yeah.
was like
It's like
basically
it wasn't even there.
yeah, like she was smashing through that. And I guess since you touched on Scylla, like my hot take isn't a bad one. I just think that I don't think she is the big bad. Like maybe she is.
Oh
I
yeah.
I do. I just feel like she I feel like they when they say like, oh, she's the strongest of the Silas, if she is a big bad, I would have to think that like you fight her very early on, and then maybe throughout the game you're fighting like other tantas and then maybe monsters and stuff before you fight her at the end again. I don't know. I guess to me it just seems kind of weird to like
Yeah. It could
immediately show
totally
the big
happen. Yeah.
yeah, like to immediately like show the big bad like that. But I could be wrong. Like maybe she is. I do think she's a villain, but I after thinking about it more, I'm like, that's an interesting choice to like show the
True.
villain off like that. But you know, who knows? You know, I think what else? I would say, what did you think? I mean, what did you think about the gameplay? Because I feel like this was like the first time we really got to see more of
Yeah.
what Frey could do besides just kind of like running really
Yeah.
fast and jumping around.
Yeah, traversal looked
Yeah.
really cool. But other than that, the combat sections,
Mhm.
I think I already said that it looked very promising in the
Mhm.
first trailer. It looks even more promising now. The spells really look like some nothing we've seen in other video games.
Mhm.
Uh, the way she weaves them and combines them. I was worried they wouldn't, they would use the same magic system as 15 and call it a day.
Mhm.
Uh, it doesn't look like it's going this way, so I'm really happy to see that, and I'm really excited to see more.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, I think we're going to see more at the Tokyo Game Show, right? I
Yeah, they're
think
gonna
it's
be
confirmed.
there. Yeah, they're gonna be there.
Yeah. I am hoping this is where they'll have a bigger blowout, like we were promised by the writer himself, like something. Remember he said he recorded something, and we all thought that it was going to be part of a big blowout regarding Forspoken, and it never happened. So maybe it will be at TGS.
Mhm.
It would be weird to show again, Western game at. Uh, and let alone have a big blowout about it, but they already confirmed it, so
Mhm.
who knows.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, because I feel like, because I think one thing we forgot to mention was that at the end of the trailer, we didn't get a release date, but we got a release window. And
Just as good.
yeah, which I mean,
Yes.
I think that's a good thing. I don't think, but I know some people, if they're listening, I won't name them, but they can be very technical about the difference between a release date and a release window. So I just
I
want,
feel spring is, is it's good enough.
yeah,
Uh
like to me, it's not like the actual date, but I feel like spring gives you a very good idea of like when this game is
yeah,
coming.
especially in these times, where
Hmm.
every game is getting delayed left and right. Like I don't think they could have afforded to give a more precise date.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
exactly.
good. That's good enough.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, who knows? And I think especially after 15, this is the same team where like they dealt with delays, and
Yeah.
that not embarrassment, but again, that feeling of like having a big event where you announce the date, and then like a few months later, you got to do a YouTube video of like apologize. I'm
Apologize.
sure they want to avoid having to do things like that again. Um,
Well,
and
it
so, oh, were you gonna say
it
something?
gave us it yeah, it gave us a great server emote when he apologized. So
Yeah.
we got something out of that.
Yes, the shame emoji.
Yeah.
But I guess just my thoughts on the gameplay is that I want to. I mean, I guess it's people probably say it's an obvious thing, but I guess I'm glad that I'm right of that. In the last trailer where we kind of got like more of the game, I think it was like the February trailer. Um,
Yeah.
where at the end they kind of had like when they did like the title reveal of the actual game, and it was
Hmm.
kind of my whole theory was like when it was building up to the title, it was like the different elements she can use, and so
Yeah.
far it looks like I'm right.
Yeah.
Um, because I mean I think so far like the first one we saw like in the first couple of trailers was like her using some type of like earth or like tree type of power, and then this one she was kind of using like fire and like ice. I think more
Yeah.
and water too. Um,
Yeah, and rocks like some sort of machine gun.
yeah, because well, I for me, I think that the bullet thing she was using, I think ties to the first power we ever saw her use because like they have like kind of animation tells like
Yeah.
um like when she's blocking it has that
Yeah.
spiral, and then that's like the same specific spiral that we would like see her use in the early trailers before we saw other elements. And when she's like doing the bullet
Hmm.
thing, it looked like it had the same spiral. So I don't know, maybe maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it feels like when she's using specific powers, they kind of have like tells to like tell you like this is the same element and like they're but you can do like various things. It sounds like you can do various things within elements, which is also very cool.
Yeah.
Um, because it's kind of like, well, could you technically like is it for example is a fire like with the fire sword, is that exclusive to like when you're using the fire element, or could you technically use that?
I hope not.
Yeah, yeah, so, and that makes for a very like diverse gameplay because me and you, we could technically play this entire game very differently if you can mix
Yep.
and match. Um, so I thought that was really interesting, and I really like what I saw personally. And when you were talking about how you were hoping it was going to be like 15, that kind of just reminded me of, to me, like how the magic works in this game feels kind of like what Final Fantasy has been shooting for but has never done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like it kind of feels like because like even the magic we saw in 16, like I mean we only saw like very early gameplay, but it was kind of like Clive kind of just like shooting fire, but it didn't have that
Yeah.
to it. um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
He was more like being the magic more than casting it.
Mhm.
He was using it to to hit. More like he was using it for melee more than anything else. But yeah, like you said, we haven't seen much of it, so we'll see.
Yeah. So there could be more because to me, Frey, especially like the gameplay with the fire sword, like she fights how like when you get certain Final Fantasy games or like they like a red mage or something, like if we got like a red mage and like action JRPG, like to me like that's how I
Mhm.
imagine they would fight. you know
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's just me, but to me it just
No,
feels, I hope.
you're completely right. Yeah,
Yeah,
feel the
yeah.
same.
No, go ahead, I was just agreeing.
Yeah, me too. That's all I was saying.
Oh, okay, I didn't know if you were gonna say more.
No.
But yeah, like I mean, not that I want them to like other teams to steal their ideas, but I do feel like other Final Fantasy teams who work on games should really take note. I mean, I'm sure that like with Frey, because she's the only playable character, I'm assuming, I mean, because technically, there could be a party, who knows? But I don't think there will be. But I'm sure,
I doubt. Yeah,
yeah, I don't think there is. Um, they can do more with her because she's the only character.
true.
So I'm sure with Final Fantasy, like with parties, it's probably harder to do some of those things. But even if it was limited, it would still be cool to like see some of this stuff because I just feel like in this like magic feels powerful. Like
Yep.
like not to go back to 16, but to go back to it, I feel like when Clive is fighting with his sword and he's using, like, we can see him using the powers, I guess he borrows from like dominance. That feels powerful, but I feel like when we've seen magic in 16, I'm not really feeling it. Like even when we saw summons, it was kind of like y'all big, but it just, it's like Titan throwing a rock, but it's like it just didn't have enough to me, and I feel like I don't know, like
Yeah,
this.
and that might also have been just a cutscene, you know.
Well, no, yeah, no, that's definitely a cutscene, but I feel like it ties into like I guess what I'm trying to say, but not saying it directly, is that I feel like presentation and like really making things seem as dynamic and powerful as they should be has been an issue with Final Fantasy for a long time, in my opinion, from whether
True.
it's gameplay or even in cutscenes. Um,
Yeah,
like, in
like
Final Fantasy,
even 7 remake.
yeah, like even like I think a good comparison would be like, when you play Final Fantasy 9, and summons are a big deal in that game, so it's a good comparison. And like, I mean, it's like a 20-plus-year-old game, so I mean, I guess just in case someone who's that one person who hasn't played it, just to be vague about it, I guess. When
Yeah,
summons are used in that game, like for story purposes, they're like destroying things. Like you feel the weight of like a summon being used. Where like when like Odin is used, a lot of people are dying, and so I
yeah.
feel like I don't feel that same weight in like current Final Fantasy games where like where summons are supposed to be
Well,
like a big
the
deal.
the yeah the closest I can think of is maybe 14.
Mhm.
With Bahamut and the whole 2.0 thing,
Mhm.
end of an era.
Mhm.
He literally destroyed the world and the server.
Mhm.
Uh, and then I guess I think they are 14 especially is technically limited when it comes to these things, but every time, and also I'm not going to spoil a lot here, uh, especially the Heavensward team, you can feel like they wanted to do these large scale fights,
Mhm.
and but it never really had the impact that it should have just because it was limited technically, and the graphics are now starting to show their age. I'm hoping they can achieve that in 16, since it's the same team as the Heavensward team, the leads at least. And from the trailer, it looked like they'll try to go that way. I'm hoping that technology finally allows them to, make something good with that stuff. That's all.
I think it goes back to like even our how we started off this podcast just talking about how we got into the series, and I feel like back then they weren't afraid to be like, hey, we can't do this in game, so we'll use CG to showcase what we can't do. And I feel like these days they don't do that, and it's like, why though? Because I just feel like I would rather get a scene that, like, even if it's CG, that really showcases like the developer's point, than something that feels kind of like half baked in a way. Because I feel like 15 kind of like, I mean, 15 suffered from a lot of things. I think also like too high expectations due to like some of the trailers being quite misleading. Uh,
A little bit.
yeah, a little bit. Um, and so I feel like, I guess that's a good comparison. Like the Leviathan fight and like the old versus trailers, where it's like that wasn't real gameplay, but people to this day they don't know. Like there's people who don't know that. Like they think it was real, and that like they were shortchanged and they just didn't
Mhm.
do it for some reason. uh,
Hot content.
yeah, and um, and I know there were some complaints about with 16 where you see like the Shiva versus like Titan, and everything feels kind of flat and like
Yeah.
not really interesting. Like to me, it doesn't feel visually like it's not a visually interesting scene. And I think 16, like maybe the next time you'll see it, like it'll change. But I feel like that trailer in general like suffered with like
Yeah,
muted colors
we
and
talked
stuff like
about
that.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, bad lighting in every scene in daylight was kind of flat, like you said. Yeah.
yeah. And so it's like, well, I mean, we haven't played the game yet, but it's like, well, if you could have like that same scene with like Shiva and Titan fighting or whatever, and if it's CG and it looks better, why not just do it in CG? It's like, I don't know. It's just kind of like, I don't even remember what my
Yeah.
original point with this is, but I guess it's just kind of like I feel like, this
Your
is supposed
point
to
is use more CG.
be.
That's your point.
Yeah, not yeah. Either use
And-
CG or find a way to like make these scenes more dynamic. I guess you could say, because I feel like the presentation and stuff leaves a lot to be desired. Like,
yeah.
um, like not to. This is supposed to be for spoken. So, my last point, I would guess I would say, is that like there was I think a thread on like, I think maybe Error, maybe we had this conversation on Discord, but I think there was a conversation about like, I think tying in with CG and like how needed is it or whatever. And I remember my original point was that I feel like when they use CG, they don't create iconic scenes anymore. Like, and honestly, I think that's even applies in game, because I feel like the last true iconic like Final Fantasy scene that I can think of is
I know.
Yuna's like sending,
Yeah.
and like,
Yeah.
and that was like 20 years.
I knew it was going to be this one. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I agree too.
yeah. Like I can't think like in any game since that's had like a scene, whether it's like the
I mean, I
current.
would count Ten's ending as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Um, but yeah, like I just don't think that like there's been a scene in Final Fantasy, whether it's CG or even in game, because I mean there's iconic in game moments too,
Yeah.
but
It's
like
pretty hard to top.
yeah, and I don't know. I just want Final Fantasy to like go back to that, like have good stories, have really like iconic and memorable moments. Like, I mean, I think the ending of 15. I think the only reason it's not as iconic as it could be is I think because of the divisive feelings people have about
Yeah.
the game overall.
Not everyone feels that it was earned,
Yeah,
unlike,
yeah, that's what. Yeah,
10.
yeah. Like I feel like that's the problem. Like I think if the majority of people felt it was earned, I think 15's ending could have been iconic, but unfortunately, there's a divisive
Yeah.
nature of it. So yeah, so I feel like just in general, like Final Fantasy hasn't really had any like iconic scenes on top of like it doesn't really properly like demonstrate like power and like impact in the same way that I want it to. And so with Forspoken, I mean, obviously we don't know how the story will be. It could be great, it could suck. It might not have any iconic scenes at all, but I think one thing, it's left a great first impression on people. And at least it's the presentation of it, at least the gameplay side has been really well done. I think one thing
Yeah.
I wanted to like quickly ask you before we move on was that what did you think about, I guess, the story aspects and like the characters we saw? Because I do know that's kind of been, I don't really think something people have like picked on or anything, but I know
Yeah.
like the characters' faces and stuff like that. I guess the graphic element of it, people have like mentioned.
Well, we didn't see much, other than Frey and Tentasila, which
No, we saw some other
lo-
characters.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we didn't see them that much. They had like maybe half a second on screen.
Well, I meant more
Uh,
not like the characters themselves, but like a good example is the very first time we really saw like Frey, her entire face. Like I never really commented on it, but like she looked weird. Like her face wasn't right. Like, and I also
oh,
think like they were having like I think some of these companies have like trouble learning how to, I guess, make sure brown and black skin is like looks right under the right lighting, which I think
right.
they fixed in this trailer. But I just saw some people kind of commenting on how like the two women she was talking that were basically giving her exposition. I know some of them were like they look kind of weird, so I was just seeing if like you agreed with that or not.
Well, I wouldn't say weird. It was, again, the lip syncing was all over the place, so that
Mm-hmm.
that didn't really help.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think the only voice line that was really well synced was the last one. When Tentasila, tells Frey that she's Tentasila, that was perfectly lip synced,
Mm-hmm.
which made it one of the better scenes in the trailer, actually. Uh, yeah, so story wise, like I said, I really liked how we got to see Frey in New York. I think they precised that's New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
First, uh, and I and with the cat, the most importantly, the cat. Uh, uh, really everybody on Twitter is worried about that cat, because once she leaves, the cat will be alone. I'm not even sure it's her cat. Maybe it's just a cat she found while she was, on top of that building or sign.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well,
graphically, yeah.
I was
I'm
just
sorry.
gonna quickly add that I know there's been some theories because I know the Twitter account they had like the whole like tweet like Homer is gonna be okay and they like use
Yeah,
she as like and it's like well I mean maybe it was like we don't know if like Homer really is like a she or a he but I know that like there were people theorizing that like the cuff is the cat. um
really.
yeah because like Because like this whole thing, like they haven't said it, but it feels like it's about witches. There's like the whole like Project Witch thing, and like,
Oh,
um,
so the cat is the one who created the rift that transported her.
well, I don't know if like the theory goes that far, but at
That
least because like the whole thing is like the cat name is his name is Homer. She's going on an odyssey, so it's like you get it, like haha, like a reference
all
type
right,
thing, and
all right,
a lot
all
of
right.
witches have like familiars. Um,
Okay.
but the only catch with that is like again the Twitter account said Homer was a she. But it's like who knows? Like the cat actually might actually be a she. It could just be like the social media manager just putting whatever. If Homer is a he, then it's like then yeah, it would make sense that like this ain't a normal cat, and maybe like it's part of the
Yeah.
reason she gets transported. I just wanted to just throw that
Um,
out there because I've seen that a
yeah,
couple times.
that would be interesting.
Mhm.
I guess. Uh, so yeah, I mean, like I said, another stuff you never saw in other games.
mhm.
So that would be cool.
Mhm.
Graphically, I already mentioned that it looks better than the first showing.
Yeah.
There's definitely improvement in the environments, even though they are still kind of barren. That was a problem with the first trailer.
Mhm.
It's still a problem in this trailer. Uh, the animations, I have to point out, have been really good
Mhm.
uh, in combat. It's kind of weird when Frey is in cutscene and she's wobbling before falling. It's not bad. Like it's not a deal breaker. But the animations during the cutscene hasn't been on par with the rest of her animation during combat. I
I
think
agree.
there's a maybe there's a different mocap actor there, or it's not polished. Maybe it'll get better. Who knows?
I think the cutscenes in general aren't polished.
Yeah,
Um, I mean that's not like a negative, just because like that's just game development. But yeah, like I think there is like a very, and I think that also just might be an issue with this team in general because I think 15 had a very big problem with like, yeah, like in gameplay, like so many great animations, but then I honestly feel like a lot of characters look bad in cutscenes, and they didn't
yeah,
have like cutscenes on par with the quality I would expect out of a Final Fantasy game. But that's just me.
yeah.
Um, so I think that just might be like an issue with this team, and but I do think they're improving. Like I think it'll look fine by the time of release.
Yeah, hopefully they had more time with this one
Mhm.
than they had with 15, which barely had 3 years
Mhm.
in development back then.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
I think the biggest concern with this game, like I guess if we just want to kind of like go into like our final thoughts,
yeah,
is that I think one is I know there's I feel like it wouldn't be right of me not to bring this up because being black myself is that I know there was some concern of just like how it Frey be handled, and I do know that like most of the biggest writers on this game are white, like but
yeah,
apparently it's not broken down in the way we think. Like Gary Whitta on the recent episode of XCast, I think like last Saturday, he stated he like talked about the game a bit, and he mentioned that like he did like the world building and like lore, so like
yeah.
he's not actually under like they say writer, but he's not doing like the actual story and dialogue. Like that was actually, and that's one thing we haven't mentioned actually that I wanted to get to a little bit was I think it's Amy Hennig who did like the Uncharted games.
Yeah,
He
Amy Hennig.
yeah, he was like she did the story concept. So I guess like the actual story, like the scenario, I guess she did, and then the other two writers that I think they mentioned, he was like they're doing, in his words, the heavy lifting in terms of like the actual dialogue, putting it all together. Um,
Oh, so even the dialogue is handled by the Western side.
Yeah, and then I know someone in Final Fantasy era, they actually found a black woman who I think had like quote tweeted like one of the first spoken uh, tweets,
Right.
and she was saying that she actually was like not a consultant, but it sounds like maybe like there's
He
like
was part of the team.
as but like brought in like temporary, like it sounds like there's like the four writers who have like the big credits, but like even then like those four people were in charge of very different things, and then maybe they had like other writers, kind of like smaller writers, brought on. So like they did have. I should have found the tweet before we started recording, but I did think like at least there was like someone black seemingly involved in like this process, and so we'll see how it goes. But I just felt like it would be remiss of me like not to bring that up.
Yeah.
That so there's that, um, and then I think the other concern I had was that we talked about cutscenes being kind of like the Luminous team's issue, but I also feel like the world itself isn't like 15 really didn't have like cities and stuff like, or places to really like explore, and the way we're used to in other Final Fantasy games. And obviously this isn't a Final Fantasy title, but I want to go to towns, or you know have places
Yeah.
where people exist. And so,
It's a large scale RPG. It should have towns. Totally.
yeah, so I guess what's your thoughts? Like, do you think based on what we've seen that like that should be a concern, or we should just wait and
I
see?
I'm I think there should be concern, especially when since it's, like you said, it's luminous. But it's not that early anymore. Like the game is coming out in a few months now. Spring 2022 is not that far off.
Mhm.
Um, I think maybe waiting for the showing at the next showing at the Tokyo Game Show, and maybe after that, I I might start to worry
Mhm.
about environments, because they did start to show Frey opening some sort of door, big ass door, and they didn't let us, the scene cut off right as we started seeing the town inside.
Mhm.
So we'll see, we'll see. I'm not worried yet. That's all I'd say.
Yeah, like for me, I do think like that. Yeah, like that seemed very intentional. Where I think you can use like putting two to two together. That like they show her going into like the city or town or whatever, and then you see her talking to two women. So obviously there's people here. And one of the renders that they released actually showed her like in the middle of like some stairs or whatever in like a town, and there were like
Yeah,
people kind of dressed in more like
remember that.
medieval type clothing that implies.
And it reminded me of Lestalem, actually.
Hmm. Yeah, so like it it definitely implies that like, hey, there's people in this world. It's not like completely barren. There's life here. So like that did give me some hope that like, all right, well, there's something here. And I know, I guess where she first gets ported into, that's like a castle. And so I'm assuming there's probably nobody
Yeah.
in it, but it just gives, hopefully there's other kingdoms, or maybe the other Tantas rule, have places where they rule. I don't know. It just kind of gets my mind whirling in a good way. So I agree that like I think TGS is kind
Mm.
of a good place to answer those
And I
questions.
guess I guess what kind of has me worried is that um, this game hasn't had that much time in development. When you think that
Mhm.
it's a triple A open world game,
Mhm.
triple A open world games, like The Witcher 3
Mhm.
or Cyberpunk, they usually need like over 5 years of development, like that, in the at least that much.
Mm-hmm.
And um, from what we know, Forspoken has been in development, started development right after the last uh, DLC of 15 released. Maybe not episode Arden, which released in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
I think after episode Ignis, they started working on it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like in 2018. So really 4 years for an open world game. I'm I mean, I'd love to be proven wrong, but like I think that's not enough.
I just like Googled it just to like see what year Ignis was, and because I mean, you know more than me, so I'll like I trust your word, but I
Oh
always
no, oh no, never.
well, I guess I always thought like,
Always,
well, from my
always,
understanding, I always was under the impression that like once 15, like the main game was done, that there was kind of
yeah.
like,
A small team working on the DLC. Yeah.
yeah, and then the rest of the team went on to start working on this new IP because they started mentioning that new IP
See,
when
even
Tabata was still
see,
there.
yeah. Even if we, but you remember that whole debacle with the huge loss that Square Enix had, and
Mhm.
everything that Luminous had worked on seemingly scrapped.
Mhm.
So
Oh, you think
I'm
it's was
wondering if it was.
Forspoken?
No, I'm now wondering if it wasn't another, side project, or, some more DLC planned for 15. I'm like, you might be right that they might have started working on Forspoken right after the base game released, 15, the base game
Mhm.
in 2016. That would give like that would be make Forspoken have 6 year of development. That's still maybe too low for the amount of people working on that game. Like I'm talking way bigger teams working on The Witcher
But
3 or Cyberpunk.
but
Yes, go
like
ahead.
to my, I mean, I guess this is a good this is a good time to ask this question of like, well, how long do you expect this game to be? Because I never got the impression that like
Yeah,
this game was supposed to be like comparable in length to a game like The Witcher. Like to me, this felt like, I could be wrong because I never fully like I only played, actually technically, yeah, I never actually played Horizon Zero Dawn. I like started it, but then
mm.
for some reason I never like actually played it. But is Horizon Zero Dawn a 40-hour game? Like like just a
Uh,
story?
yeah,
Okay.
I
Cause,
something like that. Yeah,
cause for some reason, like I when I looked at Forspoken, I was kind of looking at it as like this might be somewhere in between, like, the newer Tomb Raider games are like, I think 20 hours, like Critical Path, I think. Like I was
yeah,
assuming this would be above that, but like I wasn't looking
and
at
that
it.
that would be fine. I think, in my opinion, that personally, I think that that would be enough. I'm more specifically talking about the open world aspect. I know that the 15 team is now more familiar with the engine, but unless they're using the same map as 15, they'd have to start, from scratch. Uh, but we'll see, I
Well,
guess. Like maybe they've become so good at it that they did say that they're working faster now that they've mastered the engine. So yeah,
well, I think the one thing I think people like instantly like said when this game was first revealed, is the project title is that like this looks like 15. Like there was literally like, I
I
think,
was one of them. Yeah,
yeah, like 15. Well, I know there's like 15 fans who like basically have never played another Final Fantasy before. So they were like, I
Yeah.
literally saw people who were thinking like, oh, is this gonna be like a spinoff of a 15? And it's like, no.
No.
Which I do, and I feel like everything, like even in like this newer trailer, like there are things that like it seems like they're recycling a lot from 15, which I mean it
True.
is what it is, but like this doesn't feel like a completely new like it's like 15 remix where like there's things where like this seems very reminiscent of a game I played. So like I don't
Yeah.
think and I think that's one thing about the environment that I kind of have an issue with is that like yeah I'm excited for the game but I don't think they've showed us anything to be like of the world to be like hey like this is unique and this is like an interesting world to explore because I feel like
Yeah.
the traversal looks cool and fun but like if I don't want to actually explore the world then it's useless. I guess to be blunt about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. True.
So I feel like they kind of need to like I don't think the scenery has been very diverse. And I think that's what you meant about like it looks kind of like barren and stuff like that.
Yep.
Like we haven't seen like a snow like I'm sure there probably is like a winter area or something, but it's just like um I think the very first trailer they showed I think kind of showed more glimpses of diverse areas. Like there was one that looked like very woodish, where it was like this eye monster that
True.
she
With the bear.
no it was actually like the location I'm talking about was actually very different. Like probably woodish. It looked woodish, but it was like a creepy type of woodish. It wasn't like the bear fight. And I don't
Oh yeah. Right.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
I remember. I
yeah, so
remember.
I do feel like there are interesting locations that they just haven't showed off for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But I do think it's time to like show that off because so far it's kind of like the gameplay seems to be like the biggest draw here, but it's like you're tying that to like the world, like they clearly want you to like be hyped to like jump around and move fast and do all this crazy thing as Frey, but it's
Yeah.
like all right, but I gotta want to explore it. Like it needs to be like a Breath of the Wild. Like Breath of the Wild had a world where like I don't really like normally with open world games it's kind of like whatever, but like Breath of the Wild like made you want to explore that world, and hopefully they achieved that with this game.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know. I maybe I sounded a little bit negative there, but I'm really excited for this game. It's just that like I'm already very impressed with the team that they were able to have such a close release date and
Hmm.
considering when they started working on this game. So that's more what I was trying to say.
No, I
As
don't
for the
think you
rest,
sounded
we'll
negative
see.
at all. I think it's just
Yeah,
realistic. Like there's gonna be
yeah,
pros and cons, and you kind of have to address them, right? Like we can't just be like, yeah, for
right.
spoken height, like we have concerns, and
Yeah,
it's good to talk about it.
and yeah, and we have a memory too. So
Hmm. Is that a joke? I'm not. Am I missing a joke here?
no, I mean, we remember what happened with
Oh,
15.
okay.
That's all.
Okay. At first, I was like,
No,
wait, is that a rock?
what?
Is no. Oh, okay, I get what you're saying. No, I was like, wait. But no, yeah.
That would have been rude.
No,
No, no.
no, because I was like, wait, am I missing a joke? No, yeah, we definitely remember certain things about 15 that we don't want to repeat of, and it does feel
Yeah,
like they're trying. I do feel like I do get a real sense that they're like trying to address issues with 15
yeah.
because, and I think this is something we probably, I feel like we keep saying we're going to stop talking about Forspoken. I mean, there's more to talk about. But
It's a Forspoken episode now.
yeah.
Deal with it.
But I think one thing that's really cool is that every single character in this trailer that at least we see is a woman. And one of the biggest criticisms of
Right.
15 was kind of like the lack of women in really important roles.
Yeah,
Um, and I want to do give kudos to the team because it, like, yeah, there's Western people writing the game, but that had to be a very clear choice from the Japanese side to say, like, hey, we want
Yeah,
women to be a major focus of this game, and not only women, but it's a black
for
woman,
sure, for sure.
as a as a front forefront. So I think
Yeah,
that alone and like other things really shows that they clearly looked at criticisms. I don't know if it was things they heard from the Japanese. I don't know how they got this feedback or reading it online, but clearly they saw feedback and it's being incorporated. So I think
yeah,
that says a lot.
yes.
Yeah. All right. What do you have? Any final final last thought or
Nope,
first book?
nope. That's it. Very excited. That's my last thought.
Yeah, I'm very excited because I could be wrong, but I think the date that it's supposed to have something at TGS is October 1st, but I might be wrong. Um,
Yes, yes, yes.
okay, cool, I'm right. All right, so yeah,
Yeah,
so like we basically only have about like I don't know, like 2 weeks left
yeah.
before.
We'll probably talk about it in the next podcast
Yeah,
episode.
yeah. So like, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about the
No, don't
next
say it.
game, which is Final Fantasy 16.
Stop. You jinxed it. That's it.
It's not
That's
gonna be there.
it's not. It's dead. It's dead now.
It's canceled.
It's canceled. It's now a 14 expansion deal with it. It's
Yeah, it's Angry White Guys Quest for Revenge. That's the next um,
yeah,
14 expansion
7.0.
pack. But no, it's someone actually pointed out in the Final Fantasy era Discord that I think about a few days ago was like the anniversary of
It's been 1 year. Yes.
yeah, it's officially
Happy
be one
birthday.
year. And so I
Happy
have
birthday.
one question for you, Joe. And
Yes.
that is, where in the world is Final Fantasy 16?
It's how to put this. It's somewhere, I'm sure. Uh it's now what I want to know is where is the next trailer, which was, uh s- which is supposed to be this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
They promised us that we'll have more information this year. Now I'm not sure, like it's what that's what's happening, but I think they're trying to pull another one of those, we don't want to share any information about a certain game from a certain unit before that other game from that same unit has released. Sounds familiar?
Well, I think my counterpoint to that would be based on
Yeah.
like it wasn't an interview. I think it was during one of like the 14 like live letters or something like
Yeah.
that. Over the
Yes.
summer, where like Yoshi P he talked about 16 a little bit,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
remember that he specifically said that I think Square Enix wanted them to show 16, but he was like they didn't like the team itself didn't want to yet. Um, so it kind of feels like the company is like, hey, like let's get this marketing,
Well,
you know.
yes, maybe he's the one who doesn't want to show it before Endwalker releases.
Well,
Um,
I mean, yeah, like this is all speculation, so like we don't know what's in this man's
sure.
head. So,
Yeah.
so like just for anybody listening, like we don't know, but
Well, you asked me. I'm trying to answer.
well,
Okay.
no, I'm talking
I'm
more to
doing my
the
best over here.
no, I'm talking to more the audience of like just be aware that
Yeah.
like we don't know what the hell we're talking about. Like this is all
Yeah.
just for fun.
Of course. I
Um,
wish I knew Yoshida. I don't. I speculation.
yeah. So like, because I know like I feel like sometimes people like snipe at each other about like things he says of like, well, you don't know, and it's like, well, yeah, like none of us
Yeah.
do, like,
Nobody knows.
yeah. So I just kind of wanted to like clarify that.
Yeah, you're
I
right.
think, and I mean, I guess this is my interpretation of like what do you? Because I haven't rewatched like that video, but like the translation of it, and again, there's also the fact that like it's being translated. I think some of it, like most of it was like fans translating what he was saying, um,
Yeah,
and I think the translation I saw, I think had him. It kind of just made it seem like he was saying that like it just feels like he's more so trying to avoid the trappings of previous Final Fantasy games where we talked about the long hype cycle and
yeah,
what was the first Final Fantasy game that you waited forever for and stuff like that. And it
yeah,
seems like he's trying to avoid that, but I think because of the state of things, I mean, in the grand context, waiting over a year for a game isn't really a long time, but I do think that like I don't think they plan to go a full year like without showing anything. Um, but that just is what happened. But it just sounds like he wanted to avoid with like not to call
yeah.
out a specific team, but like with Nomura and like Katas, like their type of games like fall into, or they announce it and then you wait 5 years and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think it would be a problem to wait that much. I think it's more about the implication of promising to show it a specific year and then skipping that year potentially. Uh, it just would mean that either the game has been delayed or it has problems. It's just more worrying if uh, it skips 2021. I wouldn't mind it. I'm just saying, the general how the general audience would feel towards something like that.
Wait, I'm confused. So when you say you would be worried if it skipped 2021, do you mean like them showing it or like it releasing?
No, no, news.
Okay,
Like
yeah,
I
I was like,
said,
wait, what? Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Sorry.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I agree. Like, I mean, I also think like in hindsight, he probably should have just not said anything. Um, because I feel like you know
mm,
when it becomes like one fans are gonna be fans and like every like I still see people who like every Sony event are like they're like this is gonna be the event where like we're gonna get a Virum Rex announcement. Like that's just how fans are, where they just latch onto things and then hype themselves up. But
uh-huh,
I do feel like when you say like, hey, we're gonna show something in 2021, and like he said this like it was only like a month after like the game was announced, and
yeah,
that when people hear that, they're gonna think, well, they gotta show something before the anniversary of like the when it was revealed, and that didn't happen. So now it's
no,
like, okay, and like there's still like months left this year, but I think like when you say something like that, like most people aren't gonna think like December 2021. They're gonna think like summer at the latest. Um,
yeah.
so it's just kind of like there were obviously maybe there was a clear plan and like plans change, but I do think like I can't imagine that like the game is in like such a state where like they can't show it. It just seems like they just don't want to, and they just want to, I guess, have like a short release. They just don't want a hype cycle. I guess like they just I guess want to show it off and then be like the game is coming out in 6 months. I guess I don't know.
So when do you think it will be shown next time?
I don't think it's gonna be at TGS. If it is at TGS,
Me
I
neither.
think it'll be like that would be like a legit surprise. But yeah, I don't think it'll be there. So I think that, um, and I think if it's not at TGS, we're not gonna see it before Endwalker because it's like I mean I personally don't believe in like when people are like they don't show this game because they don't want to get they don't want to get it in the way of another game with hype, and it's like I don't think showing off
They
six.
don't wanna. They don't want people to confuse people with numbers. That's all.
I mean, personally, I don't find it confusing. Like, if anything, I feel like the announcement of 16 drove people to play 14. Like, there were people who are like,
Yeah,
okay, these are the people who made 14. I want to understand their work, and so people started playing 14. And I think like if anything, I feel like showing like I think 14 and 16 are connected. Like I think whatever you do, like if you hype up one, you're kind of basically indirectly hyping up the other. I don't know. To me, it just doesn't make sense. Like I don't personally believe in
yeah.
that. I only think I only think hype of one game gets in the way of another if the other game sucks. Like that's like I don't
Mm,
that's just how I feel about
true,
it. Yeah.
big true. Yeah. No, I think it's more, again, speculating here about the marketing campaign. Maybe they
Mhm.
don't want to start 16's marketing campaign before and 14 and Walker has ended. So I think the next time we'll see 16 would be at the Video Game Awards. That would be a great time.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, yeah, because
Why, unfortunately?
it's
It's good.
December. Because no, it's because it
It's too
ties.
far away.
Yeah, it ties into my point of like, don't say you're gonna show like things in 2021 and then you show
Oh,
something at
okay.
like the last
Yeah,
like yeah
point
like
taken.
yeah
Yes.
that's terrible in my opinion. But I mean like once we see it and hopefully it looks great because people had their isms about how it looked and certain things and personally to me, this is just me. I also feel like 16 is at a point where I feel like we see it next at the Game Awards. It's not, to me, it's going to be like a minute trailer or some shit, and they're going to be like, in 2022, we're going to have this thing, and it's like, fuck off. Like, I think at this point, just give me like an event. Like, just tell me we're going to do our own stream and like
Mm,
I don't know, like I just feel like I would rather them like do their own stream in December, and they can still have something at the Game Awards too. But it's just like whatever,
yeah.
man. I don't know. I have weird feelings about like how video games are marketed sometimes, but like that's a tangent, and people don't want to listen to
So
that.
you don't believe it will release before Forspoken anymore?
I mean, the way it's going, no, like there's no way, like unless they
Mm,
mean like because I feel like just for marketing alone, you have to have like you have to have a good amount of time for people to
yeah.
like, oh, this game is out because like not like I'm sure you could talk to someone who plays Final Fantasy casually, and they might not even know 16 was announced. Like, not everybody is like plugged into like the internet and like follows news all the time and stuff like that. So I feel like to me it wouldn't make logical sense to like announce, show the game off in December and be like, it's coming out in like 3 months. It's like that has to be like some very aggressive marketing, like on their
Yeah.
end, especially because this game is looking like it's gonna be mature. It's not releasing on like it's not releasing on Xbox too, so it's already like they already have like things against it that I mean I don't want to say against it as a
Yeah.
negative, but like it won't sell as much maybe as like other like their typical Final Fantasy games. So it's kind of like you wouldn't want to do things to make it worse, or like you don't even market
Yeah,
the game
unless
properly.
it releases on PC simultaneously.
Well, I know there are people who are thinking they're like reneging on that because like before, like I think they were like, oh, it's the same time, and they kind of like started changing like the phrasing on that. So like people like I mean, hopefully it does, especially after like Tales of Arise just made like it's
Yeah.
it released on like multiple platforms and it's like already like sold 1 million units. So like hopefully they
Yeah.
like realize PC is like a big market, but it's Square Enix, so I don't know.
Well, it depends entirely on their deal with Sony.
Yeah, which I mean, yeah, that's kind of like a point that like people are like it just seems like the phrasing changed. But I know isn't Forspoken like PC too? So who knows, man? I
It
don't,
is. Yeah,
yeah.
day one.
Yeah, so like hopefully they stick to that. But I know people I think that's what people are concerned. Like for Spoken's phrasing has never changed. But I think like with 15, I think like I don't know if they either like took PC down or like they changed it like they stopped saying date one. But I just remember people who care about that because like I'm not gonna play this on PC. Like I'll probably double dip later and then never play it. But um,
Yeah.
I'll play it on console first, but I just vaguely remember like there were PC players who were kind of like hyped about it at first, but then were kind of
Yeah.
concerned when like the
I
phrasing
think
of it changed.
they showed that it would be on PC on release date during the conference,
Hmm.
but then when they released the trailer, that was taken down. So yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
right.
it was something like that. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I've just the last. I think the it was a showcase in like July, where I think that was like the showcase or not showcase the state of play where like I thought 16 was gonna be there, and then after that I
Yeah,
think I learned my lesson and I was like I'm just gonna go on and expect
forget about
nothing.
it. Yeah,
Hmm. So yeah.
probably the best thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I would love to see it, and I mean we actually did we speak about this? No, we didn't speak about this because we didn't have an episode in July. Um, there was a person, I won't say their username, um, that before this Sony State of Play in July, they started dropping hints about a 16 trailer, and they
Hmm.
said they saw some of it,
Yeah.
and they got verified by
Oh,
yeah, you know where I'm
right.
going with this. They got
Yep.
verified by Resetera staff.
Very famous person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing that I kind of wanted to bring up to you was that if I remember correctly, they saw like I think a screenshot of a trailer or something that was supposedly being worked on,
Yeah.
and they mentioned that like Clive was fighting with people, and one of them it wasn't a human. So it sounds like we
Yeah.
might be getting a world similar to like Evilise in nature, where we have kind of like non-human characters. So like what do you think about that, or like what the insider was kind of like hinting at? If you remember anything else they were saying.
I I mean that would be great.
Mhm.
Not that it's like 12, or like Evil East. I don't really care about that. But a more a more varied cast
Yeah,
is
very.
always a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything else. I know which person you're talking about. Uh, the screenshot I think involved Clive being on the chocobo as well.
Mm,
I
okay.
think that's all I remember.
I just
That's
remember
pretty much it.
like him saying I just remember like it being fighting, and I think like it just sounded like they saw kind of like I think they saw maybe more than one screenshot, but like it just sounded like random
Yeah,
things you couldn't really put together. But I remember them saying it looked good. So so yeah.
good enough for me.
But yeah, I just wanted to drop that in there because we technically did. That's like the one piece of crumb. It's like we're starving and we're like trying to get like leftover
Yeah.
breadcrumbs of like Final Fantasy 16 news. But um, we'll get news when it happens. Moving on from that, we're kind of gonna take it back a little bit with we
Hmm.
actually have gotten the releases of the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters. I
Yes.
believe we're only up to Final Fantasy 4 right now.
Right.
And I was just gonna ask, have you gotten a chance? Like, have you bought any? And if you have you gotten a chance to play them?
No. I'm not going to.
Okay.
I don't really have the time for that.
Okay.
Uh, I do remember that we weren't really kind with back when they first announced these remasters.
Mhm.
I don't know if you remember. I think it was during their E3,
Mhm.
and kind of rightfully so. It wasn't a great showing.
Mhm.
Let's just say that. Well, it turns out that these remasters are of much better quality than
Mhm.
we've come to expect from a Square Enix
Mhm.
remaster, which is a good thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
Did
I agree.
did you?
What were you gonna say?
Yeah, sorry. No, I was going to ask you if you got to play any of them.
No, not yet, because at the time, I was moving. I couldn't like invest in that at the
Yeah,
time. I think now I'll probably just because honestly, the one that like I was gonna eventually play all of them, but I was definitely gonna buy six, and then I really wanted to play five, so I know that was one I was gonna like definitely get. So I do plan on eventually getting all of them. It's just sitting down and playing them, like having the time and stuff like that is like another thing
yeah,
entirely. But it is really nice to see like yeah, like you said, like a lot of people are kind of like jaded when it comes to like Square Enix and like ports and remasters. And I know
yeah.
there's like I think people have like nitpicks and stuff like that, but it was kind of like it was a pleasant surprise to be like,
It's still
uh,
it's still a very dumb decision not to have these released on console, but that's another subject.
but I also think that like I mean, is there a possibility that they could just release as a package?
Yeah, I'm hoping so. They won't, but yeah, I'm hoping so.
Well, I mean, yeah, like who knows? It's just kind of like I'm just thinking of like when you have stuff like the Kingdom Hearts, you have like the all-in-one package, which literally includes like all these games for just sixty
Yeah,
dollars. And so I just think about like, well, what's stopping them for doing the same? Where like once
the
these staggered releases for PC and mobile are over, they just package these as like
I
a
I hope so.
yeah, like
Yeah,
as a pixel, like the Final Fantasy Pixel collection, and they're
it's
just
still great.
together.
It's still better than expected. The reception has been kind of good so far.
Yeah, yeah. So like, because I do feel like I think it's a very deliberate choice. Like, because I kind of feel like this has happened before. Because like, wasn't like didn't Final Fantasy 9 or something like release on mobile first, or like it was mobile and PS4 only? Like it was something weird. Like they always do this, and they eventually release it to like other systems later. So it's kind of like
Maybe.
I think
Um.
like it'll eventually happen. It's just a question of when, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I just can't imagine like because I think one thing we also haven't touched on is like it's not just like the visuals. It's like they did like rearrange tracks and stuff like that, and um,
True.
which is like more than like even like the remasters of like bigger games. Like Final Fantasy VII is like easily the most popular Final Fantasy, and it's like the HD port for that like didn't get like
Uh,
you
yeah.
know this
Maybe
mixed.
one day.
Yeah, like maybe one day, but like they didn't invest anything like that into it. I mean, obviously it's getting a remake, so it's getting something bigger than any of these other
Yeah.
games. But still like it's. I guess I'm just surprised that like this is like their holy grail. Like, why hasn't it
Yeah.
gotten like a souped up
Yeah.
port that has like a bunch of bonus
Speaking
stuff?
speaking of remake and Final Fantasy 9, did you hear about that leak that happened on Steam?
Well, my thing is there two different leaks? Because I feel like people keep hyper focusing on Final Fantasy IX getting a remake when like the remake I
It's the same leak.
okay, because the leak I saw also mentioned like remakes for like eight and stuff too. So I was just kind of
Oh
like,
no.
oh,
I think that the only one confirmed is the Steam leak that mentioned a Tactics remaster and
okay,
nine remake. It's not. It's the leak is real, but it doesn't mean anything, which is why
Okay.
I don't think we should waste a lot of time talking about it. I just
Okay.
thought
Okay.
I'd mention it.
Well, I think one thing I saw on Era, and there was a poster who made a good point. Who they were kind of being more negative of saying like this isn't what y'all think it is, because they actually made a good point of like everybody's like, oh, a remake, and it's like it's probably just like the HD port because it never went to PC.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and so that kind of ties into like my like earlier point about the Pixar remasters. It's like Square Enix is very weird about this, where it's like it might take a couple of years, but it'll and these I think these games will eventually end up on like a consoles or something like that because like nine like
yeah,
the other Final Fantasies are all on Steam, but I think this is the one that's missing. I got like a HD port, and so there is
yeah,
the person I saw on Era was like saying like it's probably just that, but just like fine tune with extra stuff because they also love to slap on like labels on things to make people
yeah,
think it's going to be better than what it is. Like I think they did that with the Final Fantasy VIII remaster
yeah. It's
where
also it's by Steam. It's for their reference, so
oh yeah,
they
yeah,
can
for sure.
call it whatever they want.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. I was just speaking on like if it were to be true, like if it was to be like, hey, like something Final Fantasy 9 related is truly coming to Steam, like hypothetically, like I do feel like Square Enix is the type of company to be like Final Fantasy 9 remake, and it's the HD
yeah.
port, but they just like
and
worked
and
on
then it
stuff.
turns out and then it turns out to actually be a sequel and not a remake.
Well, yeah, that too. Square Enix, you gotta love them. So I don't know. I mean,
Yep.
if it is, just hypothetically, like if something comes out of it, great. If not, then so
Yeah,
it is what it is. But I mean, I will say that like they have been getting more attention to nine than like ever before.
true.
So like especially because I feel like a lot of people online are like Final Fantasy 9 is like the middle child, like they ignore it compared to like with the PS1 games compared to like 7 and 8. And I do feel like like 8 was considered more popular than 9, but I would say like
I'm not
nowadays.
sure about that. Yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying I do feel like earlier, like here, like if you would have asked this question, like which game is more popular, like 10 years ago, I think like
Back then, sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I think 8 was like easily the more popular game, whereas like now I think 8 is still more popular, but I don't think that I don't think that like 9 is like the middle child that people acted like it was anymore. Like it's getting a
True.
show, it's beaten 8, like in Japan and like popularity polls, like that big one they did. Like I think
Yeah.
the year the remake Final Fantasy VII remake released, like some network, Japanese network did like a huge poll and um like 10 won, like 10 beat out 7, and I think
Hmm.
9 beat out 8. So it's like I think I think it's interesting to see that like a lot of like fan perception of these games has changed. Like I still think 7 is the most popular game in the series, but I do think that 10, as a lot of people who grew up on 10 are getting older, I think it's starting to rival 7 in terms of like its popularity and like impact on people. Um,
Yeah.
but I could be wrong. I don't know.
Oh, there's some truth in that.
Yeah, yeah. I think the last thing I wanted to quickly mention was that I got Apple Arcade for free, so I actually played a little bit of
Oh,
Fantasian. Mm,
right.
yeah, and I haven't gotten like deep into the game or anything. I kind of just like played around with it. And I will say that like again, I'm literally was like I literally just played like the opening of the game. Is that it is very beautiful. It has a very unique art style, And
Yeah, the technique they used with the environments is really unique from what I saw.
yeah, like it's very unique, and it's weird playing like, obviously this is made by like the father of Final Fantasy himself, the Gooch. So it's like it's just kind of like interesting to see of like elements of like older Final Fantasies in this mobile game that
Yeah.
has like, that spirit of like, I don't know, I guess it just makes me think about like, I know other people have said it, like they want like the Gooch to like come back and make like a AAA game, and
Hmm.
I guess it would be
I've heard that
interesting.
somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you hear it just like people want turn based to come back, but um, it's it's interesting. It just kind of makes me think that how people receive that, because while I was playing this game, I was again just the opening, is that as I've gotten older, I'm more critical of like writing in video games, and I do feel like this game has a very like 90s kind of. I mean, I guess not even 90s. Tales of Arise like literally has the same like subplot with like the main character not
Hmm.
remembering himself. So maybe it's a JRPG thing, but I feel like
Yeah.
it's tropey, I guess you could say. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, because I don't know. I guess it's because like I haven't really talked about it on this podcast, but like Tales of Arise is a game I've been following. So like the whole big plot of like the main character, who sounds just like Noctis, is that he doesn't have his memory.
Well. Oh.
And this, Fantasian, when you start off, it's like something just happened, like there's a huge explosion, and whatever caused it, apparently the main character caused it. But when he wakes up, like he doesn't remember why.
Oh.
Yeah, and like he has these
That.
robots, and they're like master
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And he's like, "Who are y'all?" And
So
so,
you're playing it on your phone or
yes,
on a MacBook? Okay.
yeah, I'm playing it on my phone. I'm not even
Okay.
sure because I don't know if you can play Apple Arcade on a MacBook. Maybe you can. I've never done it before.
I'm not even sure myself.
Okay,
I
yeah, like
remember I remember I tried Apple Arcade first when it first came out.
mhm,
Uh it's good. It's a great service,
mhm.
but I have trouble playing games, especially role-playing games
Mhm.
on my phone, which is
Well,
why I was asking, to see if there's an alternative.
I can look that up because I will say like when I played Final Fantasy IV, which excuse me, I still need to finish, and then when I played and beat Final Fantasy VI, I played that on mobile, like the mobile versions, but I played it on my iPad. Um,
Yeah.
so like that helped, and then
Yeah, I think you can definitely play Apple Arcade on iPad. That's
yeah,
that's uh,
yeah,
that's all possible.
and
I think on Apple TV as well.
yeah, yeah. Because the reason I'm playing Fantasia on my phone is because the whole reason I have Apple Arcade is because I got a new phone and I got like the biggest size
Yeah,
available. So
yeah,
I have like I went from like an iPhone 8 to like the basic one to like a 12 like Pro Max. So I'm like,
yeah,
well, and they give you a couple months free. So I was like, well, let me put this screen to use, and like actually
yeah.
like playing it on there has been nice because I usually don't like playing. Just what you said. I don't like playing like these type
Yeah.
of games on my
The
phone.
the advantage with Apple Arcade is that it's the compatibility with a gaming controller is
Mhm.
really good. So what little I played on my PlayStation 4
Mhm.
controller, and it was okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. Like I actually didn't really. I mean, like there is that kind of awkwardness of like using a touchpad sometimes, but like I didn't really mind it. Maybe it's because like I played Genshin Impact on my phone a little bit, and it's kind of like you just got to get used.
Okay,
I think once you kind of get used to it, you get a good handle on it. But
well, that's good.
yeah, and so I feel like the controls weren't like cumbersome to me or anything like that. I think the gameplay, playing effectively and stuff like that because it's like turn based and stuff. So if you miss what Final Fantasy used to be, this game might be up your alley. Um,
I'm good. Yeah. No, I'm kidding, of course. Actually, I would really like to try Fantasian
Yeah, like hopefully it ends
one
up
day.
in more places because I do like
Yeah,
as I'm talking about it, it kind of makes me want to like go and play it afterwards because like I just it's kind of been an out of sight out of mind type of thing because I just
nice.
haven't had time to like play, but it's like this the weekend, like maybe I'll play a bit after we finish recording.
That's
But
good.
um I do kind of like want to
I
see what the story is about because like I just do think that like it just falls into like I think the trappings that I think kind of is an issue with like JRPGs right now, and honestly video games in general, where I feel like the pro tax design is kind of like generic, where it's like the dude with the silver hair, and
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think there's like
Yeah.
a
I
girl.
play
Oh, go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
play a lot of Final Fantasy 14, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like and I think it's also annoying because like this isn't like the Gooch's like first game with like a protagonist like that because like um the crossover game that was with that had like
15
DLC was 15 was like the girl had like silver
is
hair.
her name? Tara?
Yeah, Tara, like yeah, it was like Sarah, I think. Like her name was Sarah, and then the game was like
Tara,
Terra.
and the game was Tara?
Yeah, it was like
Okay,
Terra
okay.
Wars or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah. And so it just feels like the designs are kind of uninspired because I'm pretty sure Fantasian. Like I actually literally saw something about it like today, and then they showed like I think it was something about it getting like a new game plus or whatever, and they showed like a girl and like it was the what like the white girl or I mean I guess she could be Asian too, with,
Mm,
like silver hair, and I don't
yeah.
know, it's you know how I feel about that where it's kind of like the whole
I
like
know. Yeah,
fantasy, vaguely
I get it.
European, vaguely Asian, and they all kind of. I
That's
just want
why
something different. So
that's why Forspoken will save us.
yeah, it'll save us. I just want something different, and I just want more kind of like designs and not even just designs, more storytelling that's outside the box. And again, there's probably somebody listening to that like she only has played the opening. It could be a bunch of plot twists, but just what I played was just very like tropey in terms of like the protagonist with like amnesia and all that type of stuff. So you know.
Okay.
But it was cute. I really like the art style. It's very beautiful. Like I constantly
It
wanted to
is.
take screenshots because it looked that good. Um,
Hmm.
and I don't know. I just think it's kind of impressive that like he has stuck with like keeping certain elements of like that really a lot of people loved in older Final Fantasy games, whether it's like the pre-rendered background. I know like this isn't the same. Like I think they actually had like little sets that
Yeah, it's a good alternative. It's really like, yeah, like I said, unique, and it comes out really pretty.
yeah, and I know there's he's made comments about like this is very likely to be his last game, and
Oh,
anything happens, maybe he'll pull a Jay Z and be like, "No, I'm out of retirement. I got one more
or
game."
he'll make a movie or something.
Yeah, he
That
does.
always, yeah, that's always a good sign when.
Yeah, and I think if this is his last game, I'm honored to play it. And I hope that one day, I don't know if they have a permanent deal with like Apple, but hopefully, it'll be on other things so more people can
Should
enjoy
be, it
it.
should be.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple already of Apple Arcade exclusive game, come to Steam or other platforms. So
Okay, that's good to.
it's a
Okay.
it's a possibility.
All right, well that's cool. I just kind of wanted to like, shout that out a little bit because he is like the father of
That's
Final
great.
Fantasy, and Square Enix wouldn't be the
Yes,
company they are today without him. So, just want
so
to.
true.
Is there any lasting news or anything you wanted to add about what you're playing before we sign off?
I will be playing Deltarune as soon as possible. I'm
Yes.
really excited to start it.
Yes, yeah, I'm probably honestly like I'm like there's so many things I have to do today where I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
I wanna play Fantasia and I also need to like go to the
yeah.
store for something, but then I'm like, oh snap, I gotta play chapter two of Delta.
That's life, man. That's
Yeah, it's like
life.
especially you really start adulting and you only got a certain amount of hours. I'm feeling it. I'm
Yeah,
feeling it, Joe.
yeah. I warned you.
Yeah, yeah, adulting. Yeah, adulting is something else. But yeah, I'm really excited because
It's fine.
I replayed chapter one last night.
Yeah,
Um, and I forgot how like charming and like funny like Toby Fox
yeah,
makes these games.
yep.
And it's like
Pure gems, man.
yeah, and it's like it's so unique where it's like you just don't find this in like any other game, like any other like whether it's AAA or like any something in between or like an indie game. Like last
Yep.
night there was a there was a part I was playing where like you're in the castle at the end, and this is for chapter one, so this is not chapter two
Yeah.
spoilers. Um, and I guess there's like this guy who's like the second hand to the king. And he like traps you in this room, and they like play this super dramatic music. And he's like, "I'm the king of puzzles, and you're gonna have to solve it." And then and it's
I
like,
remember
yeah,
that.
and he's like, he just moved this box, and he's like, it's like this moment of silence. He's like, God damn it, and he just flies away. And it's so stupid. But it's so funny at the same time, and it's like you just
Yeah.
don't find anything else like that.
Nope. I
So
remember I didn't expect anything from when I started playing Undertale back then.
mhm.
It really caught me off guard. It's so good.
Yeah, and it's funny because like I'm I actually kind of spoiled myself on Undertale because like I listen to a lot of like video game music and I have like different playlists on Spotify and I had this
Yeah.
one playlist that was like boss music and
Yeah.
you know how like Spotify will like recommend tracks like if you're using on the desktop version
Yeah.
it'll like have like tracks and there was one I hadn't played Undertale yet and there was one that was like your best nightmare and I
Hmm.
played it and I listened to it. I was like, "What the hell is this? Like, like what is the context for this track?" And so, like, I think I
You
like,
Googled it.
yeah, like I
Oh.
YouTubed it, and then I was
Oh.
like, "Oh," and I still had questions.
Actually, I don't remember. I really should replay it. It's been a while. But
Well,
if I'm going, I will say that if you spoil yourself by listening to the music, I think it was worth it. It has a spectacular soundtrack.
no, it was definitely worth it. Like, because
Music
even
is,
I literally spoiled myself basically on like because I guess there's technically different routes, but when you do like the first route, like I basically like spoiled myself on like the final boss, um, and like I saw it, and because I was
yeah,
like, because like a lot of the thumbnails like show what the boss is, and that's kind of like a moment that's supposed to like surprise you,
yeah,
when you're playing because it's creepy, and um, and while I did spoil myself on that, and I also because like I had like a bunch of questions, so like I kind of was like, wait, I need to go to the
I
context.
get it.
So like I
I
spoiled
get it.
myself even more. so 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 I guess what I'm saying is like if you're listening, you never have played Undertale. I would say even if you've been spoiled on aspects of it, like even major aspects of the game, I think it's worth playing because it's like that game is like the very definition of like it's about the journey and it's about
True.
like all these characters you meet and like connect with um and
Yeah,
so when you get to the ending it's like even if you already know what's going to happen it's so emotional like I honestly okay spoiler alert time for like Undertale So if you've never played it, please stop listening. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Like when
See you
you,
next month.
yeah, see you next month. When you meet like Azrael, like at the end of the game, like the final like pacifist run, and like you can
Yeah,
hug him, like that's so emotional. Like it's playing
yeah.
like his theme and stuff like that, and it's like, man, why am I like emotional over like this little like fucking
Pixels,
goat?
literal pixels.
Yeah, it's literal pixels, and it's like this game is making me feel the emotions for like this little boy who was basically like murdered and turned into like this heartless flower. And I don't. It's just fucking insane, and it's like that is it's just so much good writing and like storytelling in this game that like
Yeah,
you just don't
mhm.
expect. So.
That's all this game needed. You know, a
Hmm.
great dialogue and excellent music, and
Yeah,
that's the game.
yeah, and I'm really excited to get into Deltarune Chapter 2 because like I don't like. Have you ever really like dived into like the theories and like Easter eggs and like secrets in Undertale before?
No, I remember even being surprised that you could finish the game without killing, anything or
Mm.
anyone. After I read about it, I
Oh wow!
considered, and I'm still considering doing it.
Wait, oh my
Uh,
god! So did I just because I said that assuming that you
no,
played.
no, 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 no. I think I still could hug, the flower at the end. I'm not
Well,
sure.
then that means you did the pacifist run because that's what it is. So like,
I didn't do the pacifist.
well then
I
yeah.
killed. I killed. Yeah,
Okay,
I
okay, wait. So did you?
like I said, I don't remember a lot of this game. That's why I want to replay it.
Well, because like the hugging like Azrael, because like
Yeah, maybe I YouTube the
yeah,
different
you
ending.
must have yeah, then you
I
must have you yeah, because like hugging because like there's a lot of bad like okay like I'm not gonna since you never played it I'm gonna go into the
It's
details
fine.
of
It's fine. It's old now.
well okay
Then
okay well like and again I mean hopefully people laugh but basically like in the true pacifist run because after you like fight Flowey and you like beat
yeah.
him you like open the game again you'll get like you can hang out with like Alphys, like the lab lady, like the scientist, and you like hang out with
Okay.
her, and then you do like a date thing. You know how like with Papyrus, you do like the date thing with him. Do you remember that?
Not really.
Okay,
No,
well there's like
but
a
okay.
there's like it's just like a funny moment or whatever. It's like just character building, like hanging out with him. You do like something like that, with, like Alphys, the scientist lady, and after you
Hmm.
do that, and to do this, you had to have done like the run where you just like I
Don't
guess
kill anyone.
yeah or yeah, and because I think when like going into it, I knew about the different routes, so I just made sure just don't kill anything. So when
Yeah.
so when I didn't have to like replay the game again because I think if you play the game the first time and you've like killed something, then I think you might have to like do it again, like play the game again and like do like make sure you don't kill anything to like do the thing with Alphys. So after
Yeah.
you hang out with her, I think she like calls you or like you find a note and it's like telling you to go to like her lab. And you kind of find like this note where she's like, I'm a horrible person, like I have all these secrets or whatever. And you can go deeper, I think go into like an elevator or something, where you can go into like a deeper part of her lab that's like not available in like the neutral
Hmm.
route of the game. And like the neutral route is like if you kind of killed people, but like not everybody. And
Yeah.
and during that
That's.
like
I think that's what I did. Yeah.
okay, okay, yeah. So like when you go into the deeper part of her lab, like you basically find out that like she was doing experiments. I think I can't remember if like the king knew about it, but like I think I don't think he knew like the extent of what she was doing, but I think he basically told her like, "Hey, we need to find a way to like break the barrier." So she was doing experiments to find like discover like find out how to do that so they could be free. And while
Mhm.
you're like going through the lab, there's like all these different tapes, and it's kind of like giving you context of like what happened in the past. Um,
Oh,
yeah, like
yeah.
it's deep because like you find out that basically because you know how like everyone I think calls you like Kara or whatever, and then you find out
Hmm.
maybe this happens in like I don't think this happens in the neutral route, so you don't know this. Okay, so like you basically find out that like the character you name the character at the very beginning of the game, that's not who you're playing. Like you find out that like the character you've been playing the whole time is actually named Frisk, and the character that you name at the very beginning of the game is the first like is the
Uh-huh.
human that fell, like the first human that fell, and like the king and
Oh,
his wife, they adopted that human and they had a son. And you find out like in the tapes that like I guess Alphys found them and like she hid them because they're kind of like disturbing because she didn't want to show that to the king. And it was like basically it's like the son Azrael like talking to the human, and like I guess the humans telling them like, "Hey, I'm gonna like eat this like I think it's like butterscotch, some type of flour to make me sick because I think they accidentally fed it to the king or dad and he got sick, and they're like, I'm gonna eat a lot, and basically we're gonna like combine our souls so that you can go through the barrier because you know like the
uh-huh.
souls and stuff is like a big part of the game. And
Yeah.
I guess they did that, and when like Azrael he was able to pass through the barrier, and humans saw him. And when humans saw him, I think the human like Kara is like I think their canon name is like Kara, but like you could technically name them whatever you want. Like I think they want like Azrael, like the monster, the king's and Toriel's son, to kill them, but he refuses, and he lets them attack them, and he basically
Hmm.
dies, but he's able to like return back to the underground, and he dies in like the bed of flowers. And one of the like lore in the game is that like when monsters die, for instead of like I guess having a funeral, like they lay their ashes on something they care about, and there's like a reason for
Oh,
that. And because his like he dies and like he basically turns to
wow.
dust or whatever, um, he's like I think monster's ashes kind of like I don't know if it's like he combines with the flowers, but basically when like Alphys, the scientist, is like doing these like experiments to like you know how like in the game like they talk about determination a lot, like that's like an
Yeah.
actual concept, and I guess monsters don't have it, and you need like determination to like pass through the barrier, and so she's trying to like inject things with determination, and she injects the flowers that Azrael dies into the flowers that he died on. And because his dust and stuff was on them, that the, the, basically she gives the flowers life. And like the flower that like actually gets determination is Flowey. And Flowey is Azrael. But like he turned into a flower, I guess, because like his ashes were on them.
Damn.
And he has no
Is
soul.
that is that all in the game in the lab, or
Yeah,
did you
like
read a lot
well,
about it?
like you basically like because I think that was some of the stuff that like I spoiled. I kind of like before I played the game, like when I saw the stuff with Flowey, I was like, what the fuck? Like, why is there like a murderous flower? And I think I like googled the wiki, and then like I kind of like read some of it, and then I was like, oh, these are like deep spoilers, and like reading it made me want to like play the game, but like when you play the game, like it explains it to you, but like you also kind of like have to connect the dots yourself. Like it, like the way I'm explaining it, like again, you have to connect the dots, and like it does help, like you know, probably
To
like
have a wiki.
Yeah, like
to
either
read
having the
about it.
wiki
Yeah,
or like watching somebody or whatever, but like it does explain all this, like because
and
in the lab you're
I
finding. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah. No, I'm just saying I really have to replay it, and
Yeah, do
maybe
the passive. Yeah, do the
I
passive.
after chapter 1 and 2, I can replay it since I have, we have a little bit of time before chapter 3 releases.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Cause
I guess I could play Undertale.
yeah, I definitely would because I feel like because again, like because another thing is that and I forgot to mention is like again you're finding like notes and like video like recordings either from alphas or like things she found or like
Yeah.
there's another thing that like when I say like we're exploring these labs, it's giving you context clues where like alpha says like I decided to start the experience to like inject something with determination. Like she started injecting other monsters with determination that were like gonna die. And so she started using them as experiments and
Oh.
she injected them with determination and then they thought they were gonna live and so she told their families like, hey, like, they'll be okay. And then what happened is like these monsters started fusing together and so while you're exploring like these labs, it's like dark and creepy, and you'll like run into like these random enemy encounters, like these monsters that are like fused together, and like they kind of say gibberish, and you have to like spare them and stuff, and you find out that like these are like basically former monsters in the underground that have like fused together because she injected them with determination and like you see in her lab like a note that she's like I decided to use like the flowers as like an experiment and you see like a golden flower and like a bit like a glass thing or whatever so it's like implying like that's how Flowey was created that she injected those
Oh.
flowers with determination and
Oh.
so like it does like the way I'm explaining is kind of like oh because I'm trying to like remember details as I'm explaining it to you but like it does like it all makes sense like I'm sure if you were like playing it blind like you like I'm sure some of it would probably like maybe come off confusing but like it is explained in like having someone like either reading a wiki or like watching a YouTube video once they break it down you could probably like if there was something confusing you'd be like oh okay that was explained I get it but like
Mm.
it does explain it so um yeah so like so
Yeah.
yeah that all happens and you because like when you fight Flowey when he's saying like in the neutral run that like I have the ability to save and like I've done everything you've done. Like I've done like a route where like I'm nice to everyone, I save everyone. I've done a route where like I kill everyone and I don't feel anything. It's because like he's Azrael and he's died and he has no soul anymore. And that's why like Flowey can't that's why he's like this crazy flower who can't feel anything because he literally can't feel anything. Um
Mm.
and so like after that, there's like you basically I think like the reason you're in the lab, you're like collecting things and like after you've gotten it all, like you basically have to meet because they're like the monsters that like fuse together, they're called something, they're called like animites or something like that. You basically have to like meet every one of them. And then there's like a point where like I think you're trying to like turn on the power for the lab or something like that. And there's a point where they're like almost about to like gang up on you and like Alphys comes and she's like chill out, like I have you guys' food or whatever. And you like talk to her and she's like she basically like tells you like I need to do the right thing and like tell these people like their family that like hey, your loved ones are technically still alive and so like she leaves to like go and take them to like their family and when you go to the elevator it doesn't take you like up to her upper lab. It takes you like somewhere else, like to the I think to the Agor's castle, and then you see like vines, and you realize, all right, like Flowey's probably up to some shit, and so like you go to like meet.
That's after the ending, but that's after the ending. Oh.
Well, okay, so like when you do the neutral route and like you decide to spare Flowey, and then like you restart the game, and then you go and do like the stuff with Alphys the ending's different
Yeah.
from this point on. So like when you do the stuff like to go meet Alphys, like it's not this like you don't fight Asgard, you don't fight Flowey, like everything from like Alphys and like going into the lab, that change it's like a new part of the story.
Okay.
So like from this point on, like again, like I'm probably like missing some details, but it's been a while since I played it too. Um, so I feel like we're like straight up
Yeah.
still recording. I'm sorry, people, but
Yeah. Thank you for coming to our
yeah,
Undertale episode.
yeah, like we're diving
That's
into like under. Yeah, we're gonna have to add that to the
the
episode
lore.
title, like whatever the episode title is, and then plus we talk about Undertale for a very long time. But okay, so like. So yeah, like I just remember there's a part where like after you talk to Alphys and she's like, all right, I'm gonna take these people to their family because they need to know that like they're alive, even if they like look like fucked up. They need to know they look alive, they're alive. And so you can leave and then but the elevator doesn't take you where you're supposed to. It takes you like into like the city where like you head towards like Asgore's castle. And
Okay.
then it starts like kind of similar to how like when you fight Asgore, in the basic route, and then I think
Hmm.
but this time you're able to like talk to him. He's like, yeah, like we shouldn't fight or something like that. I think like Toriel or somebody shows up and she's like, what are you doing or whatever. Like basically there's like this part where like all the people you met like show up and it's like yeah like it's like a feel good moment, and like you don't fight Asgore, and then like
Okay.
Flowey shows up, and he's like, man, fuck all y'all, like he's like fuck y'all, and then he like wraps everybody up in like vines, but then everybody's like, no, like screw you, Flower, like you suck, and then he basically like takes everybody's souls, and he turns into like Azrael, but he's like this like monster form of like Azrael because like Azrael was like a child when he died, and but
Yeah.
like Azrael looks like kind of like an adult version of himself, and he kind of looks demonic, and you fight him because like when like after he like after Flowey like takes everybody's souls because it's like all the NPCs and stuff you meet, it shows like Azrael as a child, and it's like his back, and he like turns to you, and he's like, "Howdy!" Like he talks like Flowey, and he's like, "I am," and then it's like Azrael Dreamer and like capital letters, like telling you like, "Oh shit!" Like this is Azrael, not Azrael, it's Toriel's and Asgore's son. And you like fight him, like you have to fight him, and you basically like have to like get your friends' souls back. So like you get like Papyrus and Sans, Undyne, Alphys, and stuff like that, and they like help you. And then it's like the game is like there's one more soul to save. You realize Azrael is like the last soul you have to save, and it's like you have like it's so like when you talk like you would love this because like the music is so fucking good like like during this
I mean, I
part.
believe you.
Yeah, like
I believe
it's
you.
it's so good. Like I think the track is called like
Yeah.
Hopes and Dreams because it's like when you're fighting him, like you don't
Well,
attack. Oh, go
there
ahead.
is a track in Deltarune called Fields of Hopes and
Yeah,
Dreams,
like
which is one of the better ones.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it's so good. Like it's so good. Like when you attack him, like I think it's like you. I think well, I don't think it's like attack. Like I think like your action. It's like instead of it being like food or something, like it's like use hopes and dreams. Like it's so cool. And like where you're like you can like click to spare him, and he's like no like it's so emotional and like he starts crying and it's like it's so good. And like basically after like you save like your friends and you realize like you have to save him, um he turns back into a child. Like I'm sure I'm missing like a detail, but like I just remember like he turns back into a child and like he's crying, and he's saying like he's basically kind of like asking you like I don't want to turn back into Flowey. Like I don't want to be like soulless, and like I don't want to like forget who I am. And he's saying like before I give you back everybody's souls, because that was like the whole thing with like Flowey and like the Neutral Run, like
Hmm.
he stole all the souls, the human souls, to like break down the barrier. And like Azrael's like, before I give everybody's souls back, I have one last thing to do. And like this rock music plays where like he breaks down the barrier so they can all be free. And then there's like the part where like you can choose to hug him, and it's like it's so good. And after that moment, you basically can like all your friends and stuff, like they all are like, oh, we're free, and you can like talk to them. And like before you like go through the barrier, you can literally go through like every location in the game and like talk to everyone. And like, like it's kind of like a way to say
Yeah.
goodbye. Like, hey, we're all gonna leave. And if you go all the way back to like the ruins, the very first part of the game, you can actually meet Azrael again. And like he's there as like a goat, and he's like watering the flowers, and he's like telling you like, take care and like be safe. And he's like, when you go, go above and like live your life, he's like, watch out, because there's like plenty of other flowers, like flowies out there, like dangerous people. And it's just so cool because like I didn't even know about that. Like by this point, like when I knew about the lab stuff with Alphys, but like after that, like I was kind of seeing everything like blind. And like I went back and like talked to everybody on my own. Like I didn't know about that. So like when I decided to go all the way back to the ruins, I just did that just because like I didn't even know he would be there and you could talk to him. So it's just so cool. Like it's so good. Yeah.
Mm.
So
I'm
yeah.
I'm gonna do it. I will do
Yes,
it.
please do
I
it.
have it. I have it on Steam too. The first time I played it was on PS4, so
Okay.
playing it on Steam without an initial save
Hmm.
would be like a fresh. One day I'll do it.
Yeah, like
I'm
definitely do it
excited
because
now.
it's so good. And like you also get like the real credit. Like when you do like the pacifist run, you get like the real credits, which are like fucking awesome. Like it's like a
Probably Google that. I probably YouTube that
yeah, like
because I wanted to see it.
yeah, because like you see like everybody like kind of like, I guess, living their lives, like I guess what they do like after they
Yeah,
leave like the underground or whatever. And it's so fucking awesome. Like talking about it like just makes me want to replay it too, because I actually kind of wanted to replay it. Like it was
yeah,
when it was added on Game Pass, I kind of wanted to play it on there, but yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, that was our whole like we went off on a tangent about
That
Undertale.
no regrets.
No regrets. Like I love talking. Like I don't know. Like I feel like when I first saw the hype about Undertale, like especially like on Tumblr, like you saw the fan art, I was like, what the hell is this? Like I never got
Yeah,
into it, but like once I played it, I was like, okay, I got it. I get it. Like I get why like so many people
yeah.
got into
All
this
I knew
game.
about Undertale was that GIF with the first, I if I remember correctly, the first encounter with a flower
Hmm.
that gets angry at you each time you mess up
Oh yeah,
something.
yeah.
That's all I knew. That it was a GIF, really famous GIF at the time. That's
Yeah,
why.
yeah. Like especially if like if you played it and you know how to dodge, like you know what he's gonna do, and he's like he's so angry and like murderous. It's great, yeah. But anyway, it was great talking
Yep.
about Undertale as well as Forspoken and everything else.
And 16, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, the little we could talk about with 16. So yeah, hopefully we will talk to you all next month,
Same
right,
time
Joe?
next month.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, signing off. Thank you for listening to once again a very long episode of Project Lightwaves. Bye.
Goodbye.